we did 1,000+ videos working remote as a company with all people. You and I weren't together. None of our editors were together. None of our producers, like all of us were spread out working from home. It began to be a workflow that was no longer creatively enjoyable, and it just got taxing, like to be honest. Yeah. And so there has already been like a huge.
Joey was about to quit on me, probably.
Bro, I mean. Welcome back to another episode of the Rough Cut Club. I am your host, Joey Nicotra, here with my co-host today. That was like some really weird finger stuff that I had going on right there. Finger guns, pow, pow. But we're going to keep it rolling because today is a very special episode, and today is an episode to celebrate. What Cheers. Are we celebrating, you might ask? Well, we are sitting in the presence of our new production studio for CinemaStory Productions. Excited for this episode.
Cheers, bro. Cheers.
That was great.
Cheers. The brandy's already working. That's why the finger guns happen for
pow,
you.
Pow, pow, pow.
But man, dude, I'm so excited. It's very bare bones right now.
Yes.
But stoked to be in the studio making another special episode of the Rough Cut Club, which if you're joining us for the first time, the Rough Cut Club is everything business to art for freelance filmmakers, where we have guests on, and a lot of times we just get to kick it like we do today and talk about business and art, not only of our combined company CinemaStory, but our own freelance projects.
I love it, man. Well, I would say that for those that have not been listening, yes, while it is not a fully built out production studio right now, this has been a labor of love just to get to this point. And just thinking back even to some of our early conversations to like the genesis of the idea of like having our own production studio, I think goes back, if not 5 years, for sure 4 years ago, because we actually started talking about this like pre-COVID.
I want to say it was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
You're right. I think it was like 2019 potentially. And we were talking about the idea of getting in office, make the workflows smoother. We just want to collaborate in office, bring people together. And then COVID happened, and I was like, dodged a bullet, man. Yep. Like that was good. Although the rates would have been great right after COVID.
100%.
Right after
we should have just done it right when COVID started.
Man, that's being contrarian, dude. You gotta strike when it's low, and so missed opportunity. But you know what? Timing is right now.
Yeah,
and it's been a long journey. But, what are we doing? We're opening a studio.
Yeah.
We're opening a production office for CinemaStory. And it's kind of a combo deal, right?
Right.
Because, interestingly enough, you and I went back and forth on this. Like, do we call it CinemaStory Studios? Do we name it a different, name like a DBA? And maybe we'll dive into all that.
Yeah.
But hopefully this episode is for those that are thinking about potentially opening their own studio, or when is it the right time to go in person instead of working remote?
Right.
As a freelancer, as a small production company, as a middle, as a large. And I don't think there's a right answer. I think it's unique to every individual and every company. But I'm excited to talk about some of the signals and signs that kind of turned us on to like, hey, it's time, bro.
There was definitely a number of like problems that we were beginning to feel just within our own company and workflow, to where it was like all of the signs were kind of pointing in the same direction of like the inefficiencies had to do with the lack of proximity between us. And so it's like, hey, we are trying to move into a studio together to fix the proximity issues, to fix the inefficiency issues. And not only that, but it would be so awesome if that same place that hosted us could host other creatives with a production studio attached to it, so that not only could we shoot our own content, but other people could shoot content in our house, and that could generate revenue to then pay for the operations within the company. And so that was kind of like the heartbeat behind wanting to have a place to have our production company, but then also have a place that could, one, we could utilize, but then generate revenue to cover the expenses of the overhead.
Oh, for sure. And
So-
since our podcast producer who's sitting over on a chair, taking notes and setting all this up, tells us to be unhinged. And I'm learning what unhinged means in episodes.
She also gave me crap about not knowing what the word lore meant. I would be very interested to know how many people out there say, "What's your lore lately?" Because I think
I just
I'm right.
love, we talked about this earlier in the office, but I love the fact that you're to the age now where the new generation's coming in and teaching you vocab, because you would always do that to me. And I was like, wait, so what does slap mean?
Yeah.
So then I started using it. And my wife is like, don't ever say that.
Well, the problem
And then
was
Joey
he started
would
using
say-
it out of context.
Yeah.
He was
or
like,
too
wait.
late, right?
Yeah.
Too late. Everybody's like, slap's dead. Like I just said
okay.
it today in the office, and our producer Bella's like, you just took me back to like 2014.
Lore is fully alive, though.
Yeah.
Lore has
yeah.
not died.
Hey, I learn something new every day. But since it's unhinged,
Okay, talk to
man,
me.
let's get transparent here.
Okay.
Okay. We both, we both cross over in the lines of business and art.
Yep.
Right. But I lean heavy on you on art, and you
Yeah.
lean heavy on me on business.
Yeah.
And I came to you with a challenge of, hey, we're going to open this studio and we need it to be ready and rentable in about 3 months.
Yeah.
And also we want going back to your thing about the excitement of creating not only a space for us, but we want to create something that the community wants to
100%.
rent and like use, not just so we can make money, but it'd be exciting to see it in other people's projects
Totally.
and like have people talking about this is a unique space
Right.
in the DFW area in Richardson, Texas. Why is it unique? Why is it different? Right. So are you nervous the challenge I put up? Because I said, Joey, you got 3 months, and also you got to create something unique
Right.
and special. Right?
What's funny is I don't know if I would be, I would feel the same amount of pressure if I just had a full 3 months to actually execute it. But of like the last month, like from when the time this podcast comes out, we'll have been in this space for 2 months now before we've really talked much about it, and have been working kind of on the low to even get it to this point. And most of the work has happened in the office space, and we're trying to get the office functional, and then we're doing the production studio afterwards. But if I actually had like a full 3 months to sit down.
Here he goes. He's asking
Look
for
at
more
this,
time
look at this,
on the
look at this,
podcast
look at
live.
this, Look at this. If I actually had the time, then it would be one thing. But I have been juggling, like as I always do, multiple things. And so it's like that 3 month window really is like a month and a half at best.
It's like 2 weeks probably with the
It's-
time you have.
Yeah,
to give
I
to it.
mean,
But you know what? You can do it. Tune in when this podcast
right.
drops. You'll probably be seeing some open house invitations.
for sure.
Probably against Joey's will. He's going to
For
be
sure.
like, it's not ready yet. And me pushing the business side, I'm going to say, no, we're hosting the open house. So
What's funny is if people knew how much we actually butted heads off camera, they would. I think most people would be surprised.
by the end of this episode, who knows? We
Yeah.
might be fisticuffs by the end of it.
Speaking of which, what in the heck is this? Because
So
this is fantastic.
This is a brandy sidecar. It's one of my new favorites. So it's just brandy, orange liqueur, a little bit of lemon juice with a big rock.
Dude.
Stir it around.
so good.
It's very drinkable, which is dangerous.
So
So
for
it definitely has that orange lemon taste, but
Yeah.
that brandy hit, which is a little sweet,
I
but
like it.
kind of whiskey
It's good.
notes. So, it feels like a drink with some legs.
Anytime somebody says notes when describing alcohol to me, just cracks me up.
Well,
It's music to my ears, baby. Music to
background
my
in
ears.
the bar scene before I got into the.
I was gonna
film
say
scene.
most people don't know that Shane
Uh.
was a mean bartender for
Hey, I still got it.
For-
Cheers.
a minute now, and so he's our resident CinemaStory bartender.
Yeah. Hey, you can come rent the studio, and I might just make you a drink after
I
the
love
shoot's
it.
over.
I love it.
Well,
Um,
after because of insurance.
True. Well, I would say I would flip the question back around to you. So, I mean, you asked about like, am I nervous about getting it done in 3 months? Are you nervous to actually begin hosting people in, I guess now it's 6 weeks, but
No. And because I believe in our team, I believe in you. I believe in the team that we have here, and I think that everybody's very limited on time. Some more than others, definitely. But we're all going to pull together and get things done. For example, you know, I was super impressed that we've already had 2 productions here.
Totally.
Part of that set behind you is from a broadcast spot or a commercial spot we made for Cook Children's.
Yeah.
And we told them, we're like, hey, we're like, there's contractor dust. I think we were getting the baseboards installed in the office
the day before.
Yep. I think the floor in the studio got painted the weekend before.
Yep.
And so we were coming in under the skin of our teeth to get it done. But going back to that time thing, you know, we all have the same amount of time.
Totally.
It's just how much we fill of that time. Everybody has 24 hours in the day, but it's what you put in that time.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when we put that pressure on ourselves to, it can be rough, but at the same time, it will sometimes make you achieve great things and a more agile workflow. Because I think, aren't you the one who tells me one of your sayings is, you know, the work expands to the time that's given.
100%.
You know, we joke about that on set when I would direct.
I told him that one time, and now he uses it against me
every time. I'm like, that's why I tell you got 5 minutes before any camera rolling. Because if I tell you we actually have 30 minutes before talent's on set,
it will expand.
It will be 32 minutes. Because
hey, if you want to shoot in the dark, we can shoot in the dark, baby. But
sometimes
I will say though that going back to the production that we did here, it was not only was it just a production, but I think it was our biggest commercial production that we have done here from like a budget wise to date as a company. I would say it's probably the largest commercial budget that we have had for a project.
Definitely up there. And for the, you know, bringing in all the departments that we did, you know, it was great to actually have a art department, an art budget and wardrobe department and budget, hair, makeup, specialty, SFX. We had a visual effects. We shot at, you know, a neighboring studio, XR214. Shout out to them.
Yep.
Great virtual wall. So there was budget for that. Cast, working with, you know, client, actual real patients and people and staff members. So there was a lot of logistics. And I think we're going to do a whole episode on this soon because it's a lot to unpack. Right now, it's not quite out in the public yet. So we got to keep some of it on the wraps. But you're right. One of the biggest to date. We had over 30 or 40 people in this studio space. And so, yes, I was definitely nervous. So day before, myself and a couple of the associate producers, they were awesome. I'm going to give them shout outs. Christina, Bella, our podcast producer. We had several others that jumped in, helped out. Dan, our production manager. Let alone all the production, all you guys working on the actual project, making sure that happened. We were running around trying to make sure that this place was somewhat presentable so that it wasn't a safety hazard to have 40 people in here, you know, client, talent. So going back to the original question, I like the challenges because I think it goal sets and it creates a sense of urgency. Am I nervous? Yes, but I think that's healthy. If you're not a little triggered, then I don't think you put enough value into getting those things done. Because let's be real. I don't know what it is about my generation, your generation, Bella's generation, maybe some of our parents' generation, but everybody likes to procrastinate. And so if you can put something off, because there is so much now, there's so much going on, right? And so you have to goal set, you have to set deadlines. And you have to try to achieve those deadlines. And it's big when you have a project coming in.
Right.
There's no second chance of moving the date, right? We could change our studio opening date, but we're not going to change it. End of July. Hopefully this ages well.
Hopefully it ages
like this
well.
branding.
Yeah.
So why? I want to ask you, unless I'm jumping ahead, but why do you think? Because I think we both have very similar pain points. But why was it important for you as the creative director, now chief creative officer, as the company's grown and you have a team underneath you? Why was it important for us to be in person in the first place? Like, why did we do this?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I mentioned it earlier, but the proximity was really difficult. So like prior to this, I think last year as a company, I think we did 1,070 videos total. That was like the number that we output, I believe so, give or take, you know, a couple. but we did 1,000 plus videos working remote as a company with all people. You and I weren't together. None of our editors were together. None of our producers, like all of us were spread out working from home, and to output on average 3 videos a day and whatnot, like with the system that we had, it began to be overwhelming, and like we would see inefficiencies within our own organization that like we were very aware of, but like we just couldn't get ahead of the 8 ball in terms of like what needed to be executed in order to keep the wheels rolling and to serve clients at a really high level. And so, you know, the speed of communication to be able to walk in and like talk to somebody like here that you're working with, like you're now no longer having to exert energy to like type out this like really long-winded thing with all the details and fill them in on everything. And that person's got to read it and then they type it back. And then like if they were busy and there was a 2 to 3 hour like lapse in communication, but it happened from 2 to 5. Well, now like that's almost a 20 something hour lapse in communication if they check at 9 a.m. Yep. You know what I mean? And so the inefficiency of working virtual with that large of a team just began to be overwhelming, I think. And especially like managing a creative team, to not be able to have hands-on like access to projects and to actually talk through like, okay, I understand you said this shot couldn't work, but what can we discuss right now rather than setting up a Zoom and all, you know, it began to be a workflow that was no longer creatively enjoyable, and it just got taxing, like to be honest. Yeah. And so there has already been like a huge,
Joey was about to quit on me, probably.
Bro, I mean, it wasn't about I was about to quit.
QCing and being the brand and art guide for, I didn't even think about it, but you said 3 videos a day.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
while being in the field, like most days and everything.
And so, for me, the business side of developing, and we had smaller teams back then too. Right. We've definitely grown a lot, even just moving into office. Right. And even 6 months before that, but there was a lot to manage, and doing it virtually, I think that was the big, I agree with you. And I, you know, it was the communication aspect of time, right? That agility of like, we've got to be able to communicate now. And there's no delay in communication. And there's also no, there shouldn't be any kind of confusion in communication.
Totally.
Right? Like there's so many things could be misinterpreted or takes longer to explain in written text.
Yeah.
Instead of watching body language or visual cues, and then also even showing, you know, well, pull up the project. Let me see.
Even today though, like I was having a conversation with one of our people here, and they were asking me a question, and you overheard the question like from your office and was like, hey, actually, like this is all you need to know, and boom, like you're up and running. And like had that process happened, had he not been eavesdropping, and it would have like, she would have asked me and I would have answered and said, hey, well, we may have to talk to Shane, but here's what I think it is. And then it finally gets back to you, and then you spend time answering her. Like that whole thing that happened for us in a matter of 2 minutes would have been almost an entire day just to get that one piece, or half a day just to get that piece of information solidified and in progress. And so the amount of efficiencies there are within being in the same environment and communicating and just like operating as a team rather than a bunch of individual freelancers has been exponential in terms of like what we're able to get done and how we're able to move throughout a day.
Yep. That trickles down to the clients too. So like not only are we able to, I mean, we've gotten into, you know, doing 24-hour flips, 48-hour flips, you know, 3 terabytes, documentary footage, flip it in 48 hours, press kit, press release video, mini documentary. We did that for Cook Children's 2 years ago. And then now we're getting to same day flips, press kits before the evening news, you know. So we're working with PR, we're working with commercial spots where, you know, maybe the planning was late and we've got 2 weeks to pre-pro, you know, design, develop, shoot, edit. And so that speed of service has been something that I was looking for to be able to offer the clients, because that's what I was getting a lot of attention from. And we still, to this day, I think everybody expects results and assets, and it's the microwave generation. It's quicker than that. It's the Chat GPT generation, right? It's like, we want it now. Yeah. Like, we don't even want to push the buttons on the microwave. We want the microwave to tell us the food's ready and it's already on our plate. And so, like, that's where assets and technology and everything needs to get. So we have to get up to speed to be able to provide that best client experience, keep up with the demand of the marketplace. And it is grueling, man. Yeah. And I think being in person, having that team collaboration, and honestly, like, I know we're going to get to this later, but the culture of it's more enjoyable to do it in person for us than not, right? I've seen, after 2020, everybody went freelance and everybody went remote, right? Yeah. Work for yourself, and then, whatever industry you are, and like, let's work from home. And Joey and I are over there going, man, let's even get more combined as a company team, and let's go to office. So we were contrarian there, true, which is good, and we've been super excited. But let's talk about how we got here.
I was gonna say,
because the journey was
100%.
The journey was a process.
Well, I mean, even like you said, with this, the conversation started, I think, in at least 2019. I think, because wasn't COVID 2020.
2020, that's right. So I think in 2019, you came on board in 2017.
So that's almost 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, like, the conversation opened up about, like, hey, how crazy would it be? And then, we didn't wind up doing it. We wrote out COVID. We wrote out, like, our current workflows. But then even once we, like, finally started getting ready, like, education had to happen. And it was like, I would say education and research. And I'm a little bit educated in the real estate space, but more so in residential rather than commercial. And so there was definitely some, like, education that still needed to happen. But I do quite a bit of research in residential, but it doesn't all translate evenly. And so,
well, it definitely came into play when we started renovating this place.
For sure.
And definitely want to jump on that. But to your point, we started looking intently on getting a space in 2023. We have been talking about it forever.
Right.
Is it the right time? Is it not? Are we ready for that overhead commitment? Are we ready for even that lifestyle change of, hey, we do have the freedom to work remote, and now we're looking at some more consistency.
Totally.
And I think it was 2023. I think summer we really started. So about a year ago, pretty much the day. Yeah. We were looking for spaces. So we were on LoopNet. We were on some other websites that, trying to find a spot. Yeah. We'd send it to each other. Then we were like, you know what? I remember this conversation. I still remember going, I don't know if it's the right time. Yeah. But let's do this. And you, to your glory, to your lore. Ooh. Am I using that right?
Ooh.
Bella's shaking her head no.
Not to my lore.
Not to his lore, to his glory.
I like that one.
Joey had really brought it up and pushed for it, from an art side and from a process side. And we'll get into the studio aspect of it too. But in the summer, I kind of had said, you know what? Let's just experiment with this. Let's go walk a few places. It's like when you get married and you're trying to find your first house, or you're not married, you're looking to buy your first house. Yeah. You don't just, like, the first one you see, you buy it. It's not going to happen like that. Yeah. You start going and exploring those houses and seeing if something is the right fit. And you also, like you said, educate yourself along the way. Well, we learned so much from 2023 in summer to we signed our lease in April of 2024.
Yeah. And I mean, even just figuring out the most efficient, like, location to put it in, right? Like, for those that don't know, Shane decided to do us all a disservice and move to the most beautiful, now beautiful because he renovated it, Lake House. And he's definitely got some renovating skills too. But he's got a really sweet piece of land up in Princeton, which is like almost an hour.
That's right. Your wife's about to make you move out to the country. We can't speak this
into the atmosphere.
Sydney, anymore. I'm on your team. Move out to the country.
Anyway, city boy for life. Like, even just me being in Dallas proper, you being in Princeton, like, the halfway point for us was like Richardson,
Yeah.
which coincidentally was a relatively center-ish point for those that live up in McKinney or in Denton or in Waxahachie, bro. Like,
company
it's just
wide, it was a
everywhere.
good
Yeah.
spot. And so we actually drew on a map. We
Yeah.
drew an outline of how far are you willing to go. And so Joey kind of said, well, I could go all the way up here. Shane said he could go all the way down here. So we had a search circle that we were starting to look for.
True.
And then we started walking locations in that circle.
Yeah.
But man, we were striking out, dude. It was so hard to find.
For a year almost.
Yeah, well, and there was things that we didn't know. So, let's unpack that. What were we looking for first? New Belgium brake, fat tire.
I was going to say New Belgium.
This
shout out to
break
New
is
Belgium.
brought to you by New Belgium.
Cheers.
Yeah, Joey got them to sponsor the Alchemy event, and we're huge fans of New Belgium now. So shout out.
Well, I would say that we were looking for a flex space that had both a warehouse and office space that we could, one, build a podcast studio, which may or may not we are building a new one and redoing. I'll say it loud and proud. We're redoing and building a new podcast studio. Which
wait, it's not this.
It's not this. This is
going
to be the production studio. Although this could work. This is a vibe. But we are building a new podcast studio, which I'm super excited about. We're also, how many employees do we have here now? 13, 12, 13?
About 11, I think 11 staffers most of the time, and then up to 13 or 14.
Yeah,
which
like today we had like 13.
So going back to what we were looking for, we counted office spaces because we said yes, we want half office, half warehouse. Joey and I fought over this because I'm like, process business, I need a lot of office spaces. Joey says revenue stream, art, we need the studio. And so again, sharing both of those brains.
I think it ended 50-50 though.
You know what? This ended up being the perfect spot. It was 50-50. What we are realizing is that, we might have some desk in the studio and we might overflow and shoot some in the office.
Right.
But that's what happens. It's a good shared space.
Yeah.
But that's something you look for. How many offices do you need?
Right.
Do you want little things that we didn't even think about? Like, do you want a break room?
Yeah.
How many bathrooms do you want? Especially if it's a rentable space. Where are the bathrooms located?
Right.
We saw some weird designs, man.
Totally.
Remember the one where it was like in the middle of the studio? It was like basically put a bathroom right there.
Yeah.
It was so strange.
And so it's like when you're going to the restroom, everybody in every part of the room knows your business.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And if you were working and you're renting out the studio, you'd have to be like,
yeah,
wait till they finish filming and wait. Yeah, it's so weird.
Well, once we found that, we ended up here, and you can't see the other half of the building. It's coming soon, but this is roughly half of the space that we now have leased out. And the other half is all working office space, to which we have soldiers hard at work at fighting for the projects that we are trying to accomplish and beat right now. But I know that we almost ended up with really low ceilings, and I had to talk you off a cliff from having like 9-foot ceilings in the production studio, and because the space was really rad, but it just had
lots of. I looked at it the business side. There was at the time. In fact, I have a call coming up with somebody that wants to rent office space. So there's a lot of feature films and TV shows that need to rent, offices for 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. And this space that we had found, say in Richardson, it was in our zone, within our budget.
Yeah.
The warehouse didn't have big ceilings, wasn't this big.
Yeah.
But the offices, we had tons of spaces to rent out and kind of recoup some of that money.
Totally.
And so, that was the struggle. Like, as business partners, you're going to find that if you're doing this with somebody else, you got to figure out what checks all those boxes, and then what are you going to put your eggs into, like where are you going to bet on, right? So we said, well, instead of renting out the office spaces, we're counting on being able to rent out the studio space or recoup the money by shooting our own content or shooting client content in the studio space. Yeah. So ultimately we made the right decision, but those ceilings were low.
I mean,
another spot we walked, remember we even went as far as Carrollton and Farmers Branch.
Oh, it was
and there was
a dream.
A very beautiful space.
It was a dream.
But we're inside, and next door we just hear this music thumping because there's a CrossFit gym right next door. And so it's like perfect location for, there wasn't
Yeah.
as many studios over there. It was built out to be serviced really well.
Yeah.
Now looking back, it wasn't enough office spaces though. If
Yeah.
you think about it, it had like three offices.
Yeah. I feel like we have already maxed out what we have now and have not left ourselves a lot of room to grow into it.
Yeah.
But it's perfect for now. And I think it will be perfect for the next 3 years. But I would say that even just like, again, thinking of like, if you knew now what you knew then, like, is there anything that you would do differently? Is there anything you wish you knew before jumping into this? Like for those that are listening on the other end of this, they're like, great, I'm on, maybe not everyone, maybe you have your own studio or whatever, but most listeners are probably on the other side of like, hey, I've been thinking about even renting out a WeWork with a couple of people, or I've been thinking about doing a couple other things. Is there anything that you wish you would have known going into this?
Okay, I gotta say some stuff about WeWork real quick, and they're probably gonna hate this.
This is not an ad for WeWork, but you should sponsor us.
No, don't tag them. Don't tag them because WeWork, all of those shared office spaces is a waste of money.
100%.
They are right for some people. We got a quote from WeWork in Richardson, calling them out. It was probably an office, a 10 by 12. We walked it. I mean, they're really pretty. It's a community feel, right? It's all these, small companies. Why can't I think of the word? Upstarts.
Startups.
There it is.
Upstarts. That's Fat Tire, baby.
Startups. And so these startups, right? So it's a fun, like vibrant community. It feels, young, energetic. They wanted $4,000 for a 10 by 12 office space room.
Yeah.
That we could probably put 4 to 6 of our people in.
That couldn't take a phone call in that room.
Yeah.
That
to me, and let me just put this in perspective. We're getting, we pay a little more than that, but we get over almost 4,000 square feet with a studio and office space.
In compared to like 120.
Yeah.
So it's like a 40 times bigger space for a comparable price point.
And I get it. I think you pay partly for the community.
And that's what I was going to get to. So like, I don't feel like we are the right target audience for WeWork. And so like, if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I have 2 to 3 people in my company and I want to be in like a place that I feel super cool in, and like it's super modern and trendy, and they got the cafe and they got the gym and they got the amenities and they got the like,
it's a networking opportunity, right?
Totally.
Pick up clients, network amongst your peers in these startup companies.
Right. Then it's like paying to be in the cool club kind of. But if you want actual space, if you want the ability to be able to store stuff that is currently taking up room in your house, like your other gear, if you want to build even a smaller studio than this, and have a space that you can grow into, we got roughly 4,000 square feet for just over $4,000 a month, which is not, and that's just full transparency. I don't know if we're at $5,000 a month, but it's like
it's a little over 4. But then we'll get to the other part of factoring in all the unknowns that we didn't know. That number goes way up once you add in insurance, security, the energy bill.
Right.
Oh, you also have gas bill, not just electric, and then internet issues, which we got to get into the hindsight 2020 and challenges, But you're right. I think it depends what you're looking for, and where you're at as a company, and even what industry you're in. And I do see fit. So let me go back and say this: we were doing Cadeau shared workspaces. They had like a great it was like $100 a month, and it was for a membership for their common areas. And I would suggest this: if you're thinking about going from being remote, I've been remote 14 years.
Yeah,
you've been remote 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
To going into an office space, it's good to like put the training wheels on and go try it out.
Totally.
And so before when we were thinking about the office spaces, we're like, well, let's do this little membership. Cadeau, you can go to any of them all over the Metroplex, use their common areas, meet with the team. So we'd have Joey come in, or Cecilia, our producer, and we would have our little meetings there. We didn't really hold client meetings, but we'd be able to either rent out conference rooms there in your membership. But it was a great way to see how you liked working in person. And can you commit to the drive? Because this is something too that changes the company culture of like, oh yeah, I got to pay for the gas, go into an actual office space. All of us freelancers, we're used to that when you go to set, right? And you kind of calculate that into your rates and all that. But when you're like, oh, this is an everyday thing, whether I'm shooting and making a day rate or not, this is just part of the access to business. And doing business this way. And so Cadeau or doing even WeWork or anything like that, I think it's a great trial to see if you like the company culture aspect and the workflow process of being in person.
In terms of value, though, the value is
long term.
Long term, it's just it's really not. And so, especially when you see, like, if you go to another part of town, like there are tons of food spaces, there are tons of gyms, there are tons of all that other stuff right next to us, but we don't have, like, they're not built into,
not connected to us.
They're not connected to us. But we have access to all that stuff within a 5 to 6 minute drive at most. And the value of what we get in a space like this is,
and fire trucks. If you can
hear that,
they're nearby if anything ever happens.
I would say though that while this in a lot of ways though is very, very glamorous, there has also been some challenges that have come with entering into the space.
Something that we're dealing with, again, being transparent, is, I know better. We know better. We walked a lot of places. We checked all the boxes from ceiling height to how many office spaces, the bathroom locations, like outlets we talked about,
and the walls in each
outlets.
room.
Testing outlets. Where's the Ethernet plugs? What's their tech box look? Their data box look like, right? And that was the two things. I will say this. Take your IT guy, and if you don't have an IT guy, find an IT guy that knows what that data box looks like. And then the second part would be plug in and test the internet. And if it's already cut off at that location, find out what's available. And we did that. We said, hey, what do we had a tenant that was already here. We got a sublease. They actually got out of their lease. We moved in. We assumed their lease, started a new lease. And so it's kind of a unique deal. But I talked to them. I talked to the realtor. Oh, we've got high speed internet. We've got fiber. And so I go, cool. That's got to be one up, one down. I was like, what's your speeds? Oh, it's super fast. We get a G. Cool. That will get us started. We move in. Only option. And I did actually call around. I ran it through the internet and saw like, oh, what's available? Well, Spectrum's available. This is available. In Spectrum, one gig internet, fiber's ready to go. We move in. I do that whole cycle again, check all the options, Verizon, AT&T, private, options, and Spectrum. We're getting a G, it's a shared line, which this is new to me, but shared means everybody in the building is using that fiber line. And so, everybody gets a G, but we could get 500 down, we get 700 down, we can get 200 down, depending on the day. And then our up is capped at 35 megabytes. That's my country house.
100%.
That's Starlink. That's what I deal with out in the country. And so we just went from, all of our editors having blazing fast upload speeds to like, all right, like let's think ahead when we got to get files up in the cloud. Let's use our home internet. So we're struggling with that. So that is probably my biggest like regret and flaw. It's like there's one box I didn't check fully enough, And then that's the thing. You can, what is it, analysis paralysis, that you can overthink it. But that was one that we probably should have overthought a little bit. But there's options, they're just expensive. So then you get into the private fiber lines, and it's $800 a month, $1,200 a month for a G up, G down. They'll come drop you a line, but it's a 3-year contract. So we're reviewing our options. We won't live with the slow internet. But,
we won't. But it's also a $10,000 hit that we weren't expecting.
It's different. So, what's some of the big challenges you think we've ran into?
Man, I would say the shift, and while this has kind of been both a good thing and a bad thing, it's been something that we've had to be really strategic about, which is the shift in company culture, right? So like almost all of our people have been 1099 freelance contractors for the most part, outside of like a couple of people that we've been able to take full time. But now we're looking at telling all of these people who kind of came to us initially with like hey, like I'm a freelancer, I work from home, I, am down to come on sets with you guys. And then we're having the conversation of like, hey, we actually want to take you to a W-2 employee. We want you to work in office, most of you 5 days a week, some are hybrid or part-time. But having that conversation of like what we initially talked about is kind of going away, and we're elevating to a new workflow. Like, can you get on board with this? And I feel like it's been good for the most part, but there are some hiccups in terms of like how people work in that environment, and like when we're taking certain people full time, but they're not actually in office full time. There's been like just some.
You've got to have a team that's adaptable.
You
and
do,
and we're still figuring it out. We do not have it figured out.
Yeah,
and that's okay, I think, because it's we're early in the stages of it. But I'm proud of the team because, man, we're all down to figure it out together.
Totally.
And that's the people you want to have around that are adaptable. And we've said goodbye to some people that haven't been that aren't a great fit for that model. Because while we wanted to move to that model, maybe not everybody did, and that's okay too. And we still have a lot of freelance, 1099 contractors. Obviously, when you're crewing out big productions, a lot of that is gig work. It's a lot of freelance stuff. But we needed that support team. We needed the producing team, the editors. And so you're right, man. The company culture thing has the pros and cons. Like,
it does.
Man, it's been so fun being able to be in office.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're figuring out, just the other day, there was a big storm that came through Dallas. And I woke up, it was flash floods. And I'm like, what do? I need to message everybody in the company and let them know, like, hey, don't worry about coming in. So I sent out a message on our Basecamp, which is our project management software we use remotely. Mm-hmm. But that was kind of ignorant because now a lot of us are communicating via text and in person. And so I didn't have a good plan in place for our emergency response. And so like now we're like, oh, we've got to come up with emergency response plans so that people are safe no matter what. We had a couple people still drive out and they're sitting at the office door waiting for us that were delayed trying to drive around the tree branches and floods to get to office to unlock.
Even this, so like going back to like whenever, if anybody who's listening has ever bought a house, you go and you're like, okay, cool. Like my mortgage is, let's just say for all intensive purposes, it's like $2,000 a month. And you're like, okay, well, I can afford $2,000 a month. And you move from your 1-bedroom apartment into this new house. Well, now just like furnishing that thing costs a massive lump sum to put furniture throughout the whole thing so that it's a comfortable house to live in. And the maintenance that comes with owning a house, now you're paying for pest control, lawn care, your cleaning person, your XYZ, like when something fails, now you got to go replace it and you got to call a maintenance guy or whatever.
What level of security do you want? Do you want to install cameras? Do you want to have an alarm system? Do you want to have sensors on the doors, motion sensors?
There's so many like back end costs that come with the space as well that like we're looking at budget and we're like, okay, so we got this 4,000 square foot space, but we're moving 0 square foot of furniture into it to start. Yeah. So now we have to figure out where budget for 4,000 square foot of stuff.
Let's talk about the first like couple of weeks. We actually have a picture that we'll share. We have a picture of Joey and I with a fold out table in the lobby. Yeah. Nothing else. I think we were in like my
lawn chairs.
And we're sitting on the laptop trying to pick out furniture and figure out like, okay, how do we like move into this and make it operational?
Yeah. And so like even just like the transition of, if we were to move into the next space, it's like, okay, we take our foundation and we move it, but we didn't have a foundation and then we're building it from scratch, which is what I did with my house. And it was rough. It took me a year to furnish my house when I first bought it because I, 2 living rooms, 3 bathrooms. It'll take us a year
to furnish this place too.
Yeah, no doubt, bro. It's en route, but it's like, that transition takes forever. I mean, freaking picking out a single piece of art on the wall, like, is a process. And it's like, you got all these walls to put art in. You got the kitchen to like build out and you got to think through silverware and pots and pans and plates. And someone needs freaking XYZ to make it comfortable for them, which is totally fair. But it's like, you got to go and buy all that stuff. Let alone all of the tech required, like computers and XYZ. And so like there's all these other associated costs that come with a space like this that I would call a challenge. And we've had to work through, and we're still like allocating budget towards, but on top of building out a production studio in a 2,000 square foot warehouse, which also is a pretty penny. Plus you're installing pre-lit lighting, which lighting is almost just as much as the construction
Joey's
itself.
gonna hit me with that budget, and
He's not even ready for
Not
it,
ready.
but I'm telling him small business loan, baby. We're going all RE lights. No, I'm just kidding. Aperture, baby.
We're looking for some venture capitalists out there. Anybody want to buy into
Yeah.
CinemaStory, the studio, the DBA?
Right.
There's
DBA.
the move.
That's another thing we had to
Looking
figure
for
out.
partners.
Yeah. I mean, as you can tell, we're talking fast because there's just a ton. I don't know if it's a fat tire, if there's just a ton of stuff that's like we've had to figure out, and it's trial by fire. But I will say that it has given me a new wind as a creative to work in a community of other creatives every single day, and for my job to now look like creating with other people and not just delegating from my house, and to do art together with people feels so good. And like even going back to the projects that we've already gotten to do here, like there is such a fulfillment loop in terms of creating in a same space with other creatives, where it's like you sat together, you planned together, you prepped together, you did the project together, you did the edit together, you shipped it to client, and it was a victory together. And it's like doing the process of making art almost always for most artists feels like a solitary task. And to do it in community, it feels so good and has given me a new like wind as an artist to want to come in every day and work with other people.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's a great segue to what we're excited about.
Totally.
And it's definitely that community and collaboration.
100%.
Not only with our company, but you know, the studio is going to be its own entity, its own DBA, and it's like now we get to offer it to the community.
And this concludes the first half of this episode. Tune in next week to catch part 2 on what we have learned building out a production studio.